When your 2-minute report turns into a 2-hour report. When it reads and gets printed up, it'll look like Crime and Punishment. How both games ended in convulsion bordering meltdown. We're going to start with Houston, Oklahoma City, because that's how the Thunder's season ended. Such a successful season for them. And the Rockets survived to small ball again. Chris Paul's triple-double, the oldest player ever to have a triple-double in the playoffs. And Lou Dort. Ed Harden, he was so dreadful all game, they'll tell you about it, with the block. Also, the last two inbounds here, somehow there was two because a foul mysteriously called in the middle. Did OKC draw up the best play? Could they have rolled Steven Adams? Those are among the questions. Jackie, around the horn to you. Was the ending played and adjudicated as well as it could have been? And how do the victorious Houston Rockets look today?
Played as well as it could have been. Goodness, no. Much too much tomfoolery around this game and calls that were made and weren't made and just the frenetic pace of the game. But here's the irony, that the Houston Rockets, we know what they're known for. Taking and making three-point shots at a historic rate. And then what do they win this series on? Defense. Tony, they posted the highest or the best defensive rating in the bubble during this series against OKC, culminated by their offensive wizard with the beard and everything, who now makes a block of a guy named Lou Dort, who normally you would say, have at it. We know you can't shoot threes, but he had 30 points in this game. He was incredible. So what do I make of this game? I make of this game that the Houston Rockets are lucky to move on, and guess what? They don't care because they are.
Understand. Can you talk to me about the last two inbounds, I guess, but OKC. Some people think Steven Adams rolling to the rim would have been easy, and OKC wins this game then. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that would have been an option, but again, give Houston's defense credit, Tony. They had two shots at this. They had a young guy, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, inbounding the ball. Houston did a good job of taking stuff away. I credit the Rockets.
Same questions to you. Did this end adequately for you? And how should Houston feel?
I would have liked to have seen an attempted lob to Steven Adams, sure. But, Tony, this game, to me, is about the nightmare that the Houston Rockets fans just narrowly avoided. And that nightmare is named Lou Dort. Because Lou Dort, to put a button on Jackie's characterization of his three-point shooting ability, shot under 30% on the year. In this game, he was 6 of 12 and had 30 points in a Game 7. And by the way, he's a guy I had not heard of until this past month. So the Rockets fans don't have to worry about him. On that. I feel like a lot of people in the NBA just met Lou Dort for the first time. And the saving grace for the Houston Rockets fans, Tony, to be clear, is that that guy won't be haunting their nightmares, although he probably still should be.
Understood. The Lou Dort, James Harden relationship, both ASU players, how they practice against each other, all that stuff is just intriguing and awesome to know. Kevin Blackiston, you in here.
You got to love the way that the Houston Rockets pulled this out. This is all about survive and advance. This is an NCAA tournament that we are watching in the bubble. They breathed a sigh of relief getting out of that game with their leading scorer not being able to find the bucket. And you know what? You always ask your scorer, what else can you do for the team? Can you make a big rebound? Well, instead, James Harden made the biggest defensive play of the game, blocking a three-point shot and doing so without fouling. Had that been in another game that we're going to talk about, that would have been a flagrant foul.
Okay. So I mean, I guess Kevin just answered this question, but I'll ask you then, Jackie. Did Harden, with his defense and with his honesty, which I love after the game, maybe the centers didn't love it so much, is he able to move forward now, even though it's been such a struggle for him?
It's been a struggle with him throughout his career, Tony, in elimination games to produce and hit that big shot and get the big win for them. But he's not alone in that. The same has been true of Russell Westbrook, his teammate, who I think still is shaking off the rust from that quad injury. And let's throw Chris Paul into the mix, too, who made some great plays in his career, but again comes up a little short in this game. All of them are going to be thinking about that for a while. Chris Paul longer because he's done playing.
I mean, I guess Paul had a couple of turnovers this fourth quarter, which last fourth quarter he had none in that one. But I mean, the guy had a triple-double at age 35. No one's within 4 years of that in NBA history. Real quick, Pablo, on Harden. Does he deserve the criticism that he is getting, or does his honesty and defense free him a little bit?
Yeah, he acknowledged the woolly mammoth in the room, which is that when it's elimination game time, James Harden tends to be terrible. But the part of his reputation that needs updating, Tony, is that he can be good at defense when he wants to be. First in the league in steals, number 6 in deflections, good at defending the post. This particular perimeter defense I did not see coming, but maybe this is the new James Harden that people keep promising me.
That woolly mammoth is also, I mean, that's what he's working with, the woolly mammoth. I did this yesterday, speaking of physical resemblance here. John Dursey, our director. Now I'm going to say please and thank you because I forgot to say that yesterday. You always want to say please and thank you to your director. This is what the last 2 minutes of Milwaukee-Miami look like, right? Let's talk about this game because honestly, I don't know. It evened out. Everyone wants to say it evened out, but that doesn't explain or excuse anything. Look at the amount of contact on Middleton shooting here. Dragic is the definition of straight up. If he can't do that, what can he do? And Giannis, yeah, there's a hand on the back. It's 0.3 seconds left in the game. The game-winning post-buzzer beater when your free throws come after the buzzer beater. So, Pablo, first you can answer if those calls evened out to you. And second, did this NBA playoff game get a fair ending?
No, no, and no, because these were makeup calls, Tony. This was a makeup call, the second one in specific, to make up for the first one. And it was so deeply unsatisfying to the point where I was so missing the presence of 20,000 screaming maniacs. Because at home, I was so angry at these referees for taking the ending of this game away. It was bungled, it was long, and the only saving grace is that, yes, the right team ended up winning the Miami Heat, but such an epic failure by the officiating, unfortunately.
Kevin Blackistone,
yeah.
Did the NBA get this?
Yeah, it was a bad call at the end. Both calls were bad, but it is important to point out that the second call that put Jimmy Butler on the free throw line erased the bad call that preceded it. You know, we often talk about makeup calls and whether or not they're fair or not. That one was absolutely fair. So I applaud the officials for correcting their horrible mistake.
You do?
Sure.
I don't believe what I'm hearing here. Two wrongs make a right, is what you're saying.
You saw what happened on that three-point shot. You just explained it there. What else could the defender do? He didn't do anything wrong. He was planted on the ground. He didn't get under Middleton to impede his ability to land, and yet the whistle went off, and that could have ruined that game for the Heat at that point. So you know what? Take that off the scoreboard. Give Butler a free throw shot.
Jackie Mack, do two wrongs make a right here? Did this all even out here? Was this a fair ending to this game?
Boy, I can't wait till Mia, your daughter, grows up, KB, and throws this one back at you, because I don't know what my kids would do if they were listening. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Listen, I didn't like the way this game ended. I really didn't like this game all the way through in terms of the officiating, and I don't like to criticize the officials because we get the benefit of replays over and over. But they seemed very stuck, Tony, on making sure this idea of when a three-point shooter goes up, he has to have room to land. Now, I understand why that's important, but I thought that being a stickler on that particular thing took over this game. I forget how many fouls were called on three-point shots, but I think it was 8 or 9. It was a lot. And that's not what I want to watch when I'm watching two really exciting teams in a great game.
I'm not looking for anyone to call this series over, because if what Aaron would have scheduled Plashke if we wanted that. But how much trouble is Milwaukee in right now, Jackie?
Well, they're in some trouble, obviously, because this matchup is their worst nightmare. The Heat match up so well with them because they shoot nearly 38% from threes. And the one thing the Bucks have done all year is say, go ahead, shoot threes. We're not going to worry about that.
Pablo?
Yeah, and the Bucks only played Giannis like 38 minutes, I believe. Middleton 33. I know there was foul trouble, but Mike Budenholzer, the coach, really needs to vary how he coaches this team up, because what he did in these first two games clearly is the wrong approach.
We move on. NBA news of the day. This came out of nowhere, I think. Maybe you can tell me you knew this was coming all along. The coaching hire here for Brooklyn, Steve Nash. 0 coaching experience. On no coaching radar, at least not as much as the Lus, the Kids, the McMillans, the Gentrys, the Vaughns, the Cassells, the Unseld Juniors, the Vanderpools, the Hammondses. Kevin Blackstone? What type of hire did Brooklyn just make?
Well, I think they made a good hire. I mean, this is not that unusual. Doc Rivers came into this game as a coach, having been an outstanding point guard in this league without any experience. Isaiah Thomas did it. Jason Kidd did it. So it's not that unusual. And if anybody was reading the tea leaves over the last couple of years, Steve Nash kind of hinted that this was something he wanted. When the GM position was open and he suggested he wasn't ready for that, he didn't suggest that he was not ready and willing to be a coach in this league. And so he's been working with Steve Kerr, who got a head coaching job without any experience as a coach. Been working with him and working with the Warriors and doing a good job. I'm not surprised.
Okay. I want to talk more about no head coaching experience and getting the job. But first to Jackie on this hire.
Well, I was very surprised, KB, because we knew Steve Nash at some point might want to do this, but all our indications were he wasn't interested in doing it at this time. You mentioned Steve Kerr. To me, that's the best parallel for Steve Nash. Both were players, very cerebral players. Both of them, I mean, Steve Nash was a Hall of Famer. No offense, Steve. He was quite a bit better. But in terms of the path they've taken and how they studied things before they went to make this move, even though he hasn't been a head coach, as you mentioned, he has spent some time in an NBA front office. I know that the Nets will be criticized for this. I'm not going to be one of them. I think Steve Nash is a grand slam home run. You needed someone that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving could sign off on, and they found that person.
Well, I mean, you're talking about some of the criticism, you're alluding to it, and here's where it's coming from. One of the places it's coming from, I guess, 7 years ago, there were 14 black head coaches in the NBA. Right now, what do we have? 5 with 4 openings. Tyronn Lue has a championship. Whether maybe there's a destination for him that's not Brooklyn, that's possible. But Pablo, when you consider all that, Steve Nash hired out of thin air, what do you think?
There is a problem in the pipeline in terms of who gets to become a head coach in the NBA, no question. But the biggest privilege in this specific case, Tony, with Steve Nash, is superstar privilege. Steve Nash cut the line because he is a 2-time MVP who was rubber stamped by other superstars. In this case, as Jackie alluded to, it's Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Joe Tsai is the owner in name, and Sean Marks is, of course, the GM in name. But in terms of who calls the shots on a hire like this in particular, those 2 superstars who, yes, happened to be black, wanted this dude in particular. So there's a broader macro concern, absolutely, but in the micro, it's about superstars getting what they want.
Kevin, let me ask you about that specifically. We have to work twice as hard to get half as far, was how Stephen A. Smith said it today on First Take. Do you see that in this situation?
Well, that's certainly a problem, but I don't want to necessarily major in minors. I mean, the NBA and all the leagues have problems when it comes to getting black people into managerial positions and certainly in ownership positions. But still, the NBA is ahead of the other leagues when you make that comparison. I'll just point out one other thing about Kevin Durant. Steve Nash was working with Kevin Durant on his free throw shooting out in Golden State, having him shoot off of 1 foot so he could steady his release, and it actually worked. So he got some insurance from a guy like Kevin Durant to coach in this league.
That'll be the last word. Taking a 2-minute break right here. Buy or sell on the other side. I'm not saying it's the aliens. Okay, I'm saying it's the aliens. All right. The Around the Horn trademarked quote, is tonight a must-win, question mark, end quote. Quote, is tonight a must-win, question mark, for Toronto. They were down 0-2 last year in the conference finals against the Bucks before winning 4 in a row. But this bubble season, of course, very different. This Raptors team, very different. Jackie, what does Toronto have to do? It doesn't have to be one thing. Probably needs to be more than one thing to save and get back in the series tonight.
Well, they have to shoot the three-point ball better, but to me, the biggest thing, Tony, is Pascal Siakam. They've got to get him some transition baskets. When he's out in the open floor, he's devastating, and I think it would get his confidence back up. They're playing him in the post a lot, and I think he can post up. They need a big game from Pascal.
Pablo Torre?
I want to hammer home this three-point shooting point, though, Jackie, because when it comes to the list of games in which the Raptors have missed more threes than ever before, it is Game 1 against the Celtics and Game 2 against the Celtics. This is historically bad playoff performance for the Raptors. It's the beginning and the end of why they're 0-2 right now, I think.
of course, teams are shooting so many more three-pointers now, and they're missing, of course, more three-pointers in games. Kevin Blackstone, one thing or many things Toronto
Yeah, I'd have
do?
to point to the three-pointers again. I mean, they were one of the best three-pointing shooting teams in the league, and now all of a sudden, after 2 games, they don't seem to be able to make one. Another thing is, and I think Nick Nurse would point this out, would be the free throw differential. I mean, he was pretty ticked after game 2 that Jason Tatum got nearly as many free throws as his entire team. So that's something else that's got to even out.
Jackie, you're, of course, viewing this series a lot through the Boston perspective. You're in Boston. What the Celtics need to do tonight to get a win, and do you believe it's going to happen?
Well, I think for the Celtics, just keep playing the kind of defense they're playing and limit those fast break baskets that I was just talking about. They've done a great job of that.
All right, yell it out, guys. Who you got? Boston? Toronto? Just yell it out. I just want to hear the picks so I can mute you tomorrow.
Raptors.
Toronto.
Toronto.
Yeah.
Move on. Buy or sell two. Leonard Fournette, the Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Bruce Arians said Ronald Jones still the guy. Ronald Jones, the guy Leonard Fournette was wearing jersey number when he posted it last night. I'd like to know how that's going to go behind closed doors. Pablo, how does Fournette fit with Tampa?
They're just throwing bodies in there, Tony. Running the ball has been a problem for this team in specific. The last 3 years, they are dead last in the NFL in yards per carry. Hopefully it's Fournette, but Ronald Jones, I don't think he's out of the mix either by any stretch.
Kevin, how does Leonard Fournette sit with this?
You cannot have enough running backs. Running back by committee. You know he's got something left in the tank. Maybe he could be Tom Brady's Tampa Corey Dillon. If that's the case, it works out great.
Mm-hmm. And Jackie Mack?
Corey Dillon, man, that's asking a lot. Corey Dillon was pretty good on
Exactly.
that team. But Tom is used to run by committee. But I also think that Fournette will come in handy because he can catch the ball out of the backfield, and Brady loves throwing to his running backs.
Well, there's Corey Dillon. There could be LeGarrette Blount, who has had huge moments. And, I'm blanking on the name. It's not Jonah Hill. It would be great if it was Jonah Hill. The running back who had the one
James
game
White?
and then slept
Jonas
in late.
Gray.
White?
Yeah, of
James
course.
White?
Thank you very much. Not James White. But James
Jonas
White
Gray.
is receiving running back out.
I can't-
Okay, we'll move on.
running
Jonah
back.
Gray. Jonah Gray. If Jonah Gray was in Superbad, that would have been interesting. We'll move on. Buy or sell three. Roger Goodell saying a number of times, teams who have fans at their game this year will not have a competitive advantage over teams that do not have fans at their games this year. Kevin, do you believe that?
No, of course I don't believe that. I grew up in Washington, D.C., going to RFK Stadium where we used to make the bleachers go like this during a big game, which made a big difference. My question to Roger Goodell is, why don't you just come out and say no fans at any games and be done with it?
Mm-hmm. Jackie Mack?
Well, I'll tell you why. It's got to do with the Benjamins, KB. I don't think even Roger Goodell really believes this, but if they can put people in the seats at some stadiums, that's revenue, and these teams desperately need it, and that's why he's saying this.
And Pablo?
Yeah, how many fans, right? Jerry Jones is saying 50% of his arena will be full. The number matters. Also, which fans? Loud, crazy fans make a difference. Talk to anybody on offense or defense. Game plans get adjusted depending on the road crowd. And obviously, crowd noise also plays a role in this, right? Lucas Oil for years pumped that noise in, that stuff in. They did it for a reason.
All right, now playing the role of Jonah Gray. Kevin Blackstone, you had a huge first impression, and now you're saying goodbye
My
to
fault.
us. Jackie Mack, Pablo Estori, showdown next. League Baseball record set last night, one you never thought about. Maybe you think it's important. Let's see. 47 batters faced by a reliever without letting up a hit to start a season. It's the most ever. The most hitless appearances consecutive to start a season. Josh Hader has thrown the equivalent of a no-hitter and a half almost. How important is this record, Jackie Mack?
Oh, I think it's very important to go 12 days without giving up a hit. I understand that he walks some batters. I understand he's no Tom Seaver, God rest his soul, who we lost. But give this guy some credit. That's pretty cool. 12 days without a hit. I like
Nobody
it.
is Tom Seaver. Thank you for remembering him. Pablo Torre, how important is this record?
I hate to be a hater here, Tony, but I don't even care about no-hitters in general. Like, they happen all the time these days. They fall off of trees. So why would I care about the equivalent of a no-hitter? No thanks.
And why would we care about what you don't care about, Pablo? Think about
Unbelievable,
that. We'll give the
Pablo.
point to Jackie. Showdown 2. The Cavs tweeting out their new jerseys. Have you guys seen this? Look at this.
Is the GOAT.
Last dance, last shot. You always wanted to be like Michael Jordan growing up.
The Jordan brand is just iconic of basketball.
So the Jumpman logo on these jerseys, that's why. But that's a lot of Jordan GOAT, Pablo. How does that strike you?
It strikes me as a massive subtweet. The only thing missing, Tony, was Comic Sans, the font. Everything about this said, sorry, LeBron James, not our GOAT.
Tweet or subtweet?
I don't go with Twitter. I'm fair or foul, and this is foul. Yeah. Shame on you, Cleveland Cavaliers. You've won one championship, and the only reason you won it was because of the other number 23, LeBron James. Don't disrespect him.
We will give the point to Pablo for the Comic Sans remembrance, and we'll move on. Staying in Cleveland, this is how we're going to decide today. The mullet competition. Cleveland kicker Austin Seibert, Cleveland punter Jamie Gillen are having. Who's winning, Pablo?
Can it be me? I'm growing a rat tail, Tony. I feel like the rat tail I got going is more impressive than either of those guys.
Let me see this.
I mean, just look at this. This is pretty good, I would say, after a couple of weeks.
Oh, no.
I mean, you got some time to grow in. All right, Jackie, how about you?
No, come on, it's the kicker. He looks like the Tiger King. Remember when this pandemic started? It was all about the Tiger King.
It's far from me to judge anybody's hair right now, so I'm not going to. Jackie Mack, please take the FaceTime.
Thank you so much, Tony. I want to give a fond farewell to Fours Restaurant, the greatest sports bar in America, picked by Sports Illustrated. I had so many great memories there. One time I wandered upstairs and Kevin McHale was with his brother. I barely survived that evening. In 2008, when the Celtics won the championship, Bob Ryan and I walked over. It was closed. We knocked, not in. And then my press pass, I lost it there one night. Couldn't find it. Worried about it for days. Went back 3 weeks later, looked in the window. There was my press pass.
It was there.
Love that.
Great story, Jackie.